My parents let my sister cut my daughter's hair off at a birthday party, and by morning, they were the ones begging me to open the door. 19 adults watched it happen. Not one of them stood up. Not one of them said her name. But what none of them knew was that the before photo they needed for their pageant scam had just become the biggest mistake of their lives, and by the time I'm done telling you this, you'll understand why my own mother ended up locked out of my kitchen. Why my father showed up in the rain at 6 in the morning with a hospital diagnosis in his pocket, and why the last person standing in that kitchen wasn't who anyone expected. Stay till the end, because the final twist involves $8,000, a cancer diagnosis, and a blue glazed jar that changes everything. My name is Claire Bennett, I'm 36, and if you've ever been the wrong daughter in your own family, this one's for you. I own a flower shop called Willow and Thistle, just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I opened it with a small business loan and the last of the money my husband Mark and I had saved for a house. Mark was an EMT. He died on the shoulder of I-85 when a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. Our daughter Wren was 7. She's 11 now, and she's drawn every sign in that shop since she could hold a pencil. She keeps her earnings in a little blue jar her great-grandmother left me. Last spring, that jar had $312 in it. She wouldn't say what she was saving for. Here's the family ledger nobody talks about out loud. My mother, Carol, called me the difficult one when I was 6. She called my sister Dana her little sunshine at 4. My husband noticed it the first Christmas he met them. He never said a word to Carol. He said it to me in the car, your father knows. He just doesn't know what to do about it yet. He died a month later. My mother didn't come to the funeral. She sent a card with a Bible verse and a note saying she wasn't up to it emotionally. After that, I stopped going to Sunday dinners. Dana told everyone I was unwell. I let her believe it. What I never told my family is that a woman named Renata Cole had been coming into my shop every week for over a year. She runs Southern Star Productions, a regional pageant company, and she'd become my shop's biggest client. One afternoon she watched my daughter drawing a portrait of her father from memory and said nothing for a long moment. Then she bought 4 of Wren's drawings for $500 and left her business card on the counter. I put it in a drawer. Dana had no idea that card existed, and no idea that in 6 weeks, she'd try to build a pageant career off my daughter's pain without knowing exactly who I already knew. Dana is 2 years younger than me, married to a genuinely decent man named Grant who works 60 hours a week and thinks his wife hung the moon. They have a daughter, Harper, turning 8. In 2023, Dana quit her accounting job to become a content mom. Her Instagram page had 38,000 followers, a sponsorship agency in Miami charging her over $1,000 a month for fake brand deals, and 3 secret credit cards totaling over $41,000 in debt. Grant knew none of it. Harper had entered 4 pageants and never placed once. Then Southern Star opened a new division, the Miracle Makeover. Before photo, after photo, 90-second transformation story. Grand prize, $15,000 and a spot on next year's calendar. Dana entered Harper using $4,000 pulled from an account that wasn't actually hers to touch. But there was a catch, the rules required an unretouched before photo, subject to random verification. Dana had already submitted a heavily edited photo. She had 7 days to produce a real one that matched. She didn't have one. So she made a plan instead. 4 days before the verification deadline, Dana wired $275 to a stylist named Marisol Reyes, memo line, Wren trim. Marisol had known Dana since high school, had done her hair for prom, done Harper's for pageants. She trusted her completely. That same afternoon, Dana set up a fake number and texted Marisol pretending to be me, "Hi, it's Claire. Wren would love a surprise makeover at Harper's party. Don't mention it, I want it to be special. My real number hasn't changed since 2013. Dana never thought anyone would check. The invitation came through the family group chat, princess theme, Sunday at 1, adults wear pink. Wren read it over my shoulder and said, "Mom, maybe this year they won't leave me out." That night, she asked me to braid her hair the way her father used to, a fishtail with a little loop, something he taught himself watching videos after his shifts. It took me 3 tries. She fell asleep with a drawing of him on her pillow. Her hair reached the small of her back. She'd been growing it for 2 years. The morning of the party, Dana texted asking me to bring Wren an hour early for a surprise photo for Harper. She'd never once included my daughter in anything in 8 years. Something in me should have caught fire right there. Instead, I told myself one more small effort at peace couldn't hurt. That decision is the one I will question for the rest of my life. We arrived to balloons, a chalkboard sign, and pageant music already playing through a speaker. My mother met us at the door in a lilac dress, glowing. "There's a fun surprise Dana has planned," she said, steering Wren down the hallway before I could ask a single question. I noticed my father, Frank, sitting alone on the patio, thin, coughing, breathing through his mouth. My mother, without even turning around, said, "It's the pollen. Don't fuss." She hadn't looked at him once. A neighbor named Nicole Hart arrived and asked if I was staying for the makeover surprise. Dana had posted about it online, somewhere I wasn't included. I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. At 2:13, my mother pulled me into the kitchen to help plate the cake, launching into some old story about Christmas 1998. I kept asking where my daughter was. She kept changing the subject. 25 minutes went by. Then I heard something, muffled, urgent, down the hall. I walked into that back bedroom and found my daughter standing frozen, hands clamped over her ears, mascara streaked down her face, a pair of scissors on the vanity behind her. My sister stood there with her hand on the salon chair like she was hosting a talk show. The stylist sat frozen on a stool, staring at what she'd just done. 8 inches of my daughter's hair were already gone. Wren pushed past me and ran, out the hallway, out the back door, onto the lawn, both hands clutching what was left of her hair. 19 adults went silent. The music kept playing. And then my mother, in the same voice she'd used to comment on a casserole, turned to her guests and said, "Good. Now she won't steal the attention from Harper. She's always been too much anyway." Nobody moved. Nobody said her name. Except my father, who pushed himself up from that folding chair with shaking hands and said nothing at all, yet. I walked across that yard, knelt down, and carried my 72-pound daughter past the cupcakes, past my mother blocking the doorway, past my sister saying, "Liv, Claire, come on, it's just hair." I didn't stop. I didn't look back. At the front door, my father was already there, holding the car door open. He waited until Wren was buckled in, safe, calm. Then he put his hand on my shoulder, the first time he'd touched me on purpose in 4 years, and said, "Take care of her. I'll take care of the rest." On the drive home, Wren fell asleep from sheer shock. At a stoplight, a car pulled up beside us, blasting a radio ad for a regional beauty pageant. She didn't stir. When she finally woke and looked in the mirror, she asked me the only question that mattered, "Do I look ugly now?" I pulled over, climbed into the passenger seat, and held her. "You look like you," I told her. That's the whole answer. That night I gave her a bath, found the horn-handled comb her father had bought her the summer before he died, and evened out the damage myself with kitchen scissors. It wasn't professional. It didn't need to be. At 9:15 that night, my phone lit up. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Marisol Reyes. Something isn't right about what I was told today. I've already called my lawyer." When I called her back, she cried for 2 full minutes before she could speak. Dana had shown her a fake screenshot, claimed Wren and Diva fakes for the camera, and paid her through a fake account under a fabricated memo line. By the time I understood, Marisol said, "I'd already cut off 8 inches. I'm reporting myself to the state board Monday morning. I'll testify to anything you need." She sent me screenshots, the fake number, the payment, the salon chair rental receipt, all dated days before the party. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. I opened my laptop and wrote an email to Renata Cole. Not as a vendor, as a mother. I told her exactly what happened and attached the proof. She replied in 8 minutes, call me now. I explained everything. She said, Claire, I already know exactly who your sister is. Send me the stylist's statement by 9 tomorrow morning. And that offer I made your daughter in March? That wasn't personal, that was a scouting call. I'd already chosen her as our lead illustrator before I knew you two were related. That offer still stands, no matter what happens tonight. Down the street, Dana's husband Grant came home from his shift to find their daughter running a fever and no children's medicine in the cabinet. Digging through his wife's purse for it, 3 unfamiliar credit cards fell out, along with a $4,000 pageant registration receipt. He called the card companies. Combined balance, over $41,000. He sat at the kitchen table in silence and didn't say a word to Dana. Not yet. Meanwhile, Nicole, the neighbor, had filmed 44 seconds of the whole thing on her phone, my daughter alone on the lawn, my mother's cruel sentence, my sister filming it too like content for her page. Nicole sent the clip to me, to Renata Cole, and to a well-known child advocacy account with over 300,000 followers. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the dark. At 12:20 in the morning, my phone rang again. A hospital. My father, asking to speak to me before my mother could tell me her version. His voice was slow, oxygen hissing in the background. He told me he'd been diagnosed with stage 2 lung cancer back in February, and my mother had asked him not to tell me because I was still fragile. He'd agreed. He regretted it every day since. Then he told me something worse, he'd emptied his medical savings account, paid the tax penalty, and moved $17,000 into a joint account with my name on it, because he'd discovered my mother had been quietly draining that same account for months, over $8,000, coded as copay and prescription. None of it was medical. All of it was pageant money. He signed himself out of the against doctor's orders and showed up at my door at 6 the next morning in the pouring rain with a folder, a wedding photo of me and Mark, and a bag of instant oatmeal. An hour later, my mother rang my doorbell. My sister stood behind her holding a folded, misunderstanding statement for me to sign. Grant stood at the bottom of the steps holding printed credit card statements, refusing to look at his wife. My father told them all to sit down. One by one, he laid out the transfer dates, the fake copays, the real dollar amounts, until my mother's face did the thing faces do when they realize they've been caught on camera. That's when Wren came down the stairs in her father's old pajamas, carrying her little blue jar. She walked past my mother without a glance. She walked past my aunt without a glance. She set the jar in front of her grandfather and said, I heard you coughing. I've been saving. It's for the medicine. $312, plus 4 folded 50s Renata Cole had slipped in months earlier, without knowing why it would matter yet. My father put his hand on the jar and said, Sweetheart, it's more than enough. Then my sister's phone started ringing. And ringing. And her email chimed 3 times in a row. She read it out loud in a voice that cracked halfway through. Southern Star Productions was permanently banning her, and any minor in her custody, from every event for the next 3 years. Effective immediately. Non-negotiable. How does she already know? Dana whispered. I told her last night, I said. Grant set his car keys on the table in front of his wife. Take Harper to my sister's, he said. I'm not coming home tonight. Then he turned to my mother on his way out and said quietly, if your husband needs somewhere to stay, my door's open. Not yours. My mother reached for the manila folder one more time, the apology statement, the one calling all of this a regrettable misunderstanding. I picked it up, tore it clean in half, and set both pieces in front of her. There's no misunderstanding to sign, I said. My father gave my mother 4 conditions before she left that kitchen: repay every cent within 60 days, sign over the joint savings to his name alone, never contact Wren directly again, and understand that he'd be recovering in my house, not hers, while they figured out what, if anything, their marriage still was. She signed all 4 within 2 weeks. By that afternoon, the pageant board had voted unanimously to ban my sister for good. A well-known advocacy account had posted the clip without naming anyone, they didn't have to. By lunchtime, everyone who knew my sister knew exactly whose voice that was. She lost thousands of followers within hours. Her sponsors dropped her by the afternoon. And the email waiting in my inbox that morning wasn't damage control, it was an official offer for my 11-year-old daughter to become the lead illustrator for next year's entire calendar. Full credit. Real payment. A future nobody could take away from her. Weeks later, my father moved into my living room permanently for treatment. Wren reads to him every night. He's teaching himself her father's old fishtail braid, badly, but she wears it anyway. My sister has never apologized to my daughter's face. My mother hasn't been invited back. But my father breathes a little easier every day. My daughter draws every morning before school, and the family I actually chose to keep now fits, with room to spare, inside one small flower shop on a quiet street in Charlotte. And if you've ever sat in a room where nobody stood up for your child, you already know why I never gave them the chance to do it twice.